Birds of a Feather by Windy Angel. Chapter 5. Each feathered breath, a prayer to find a home. Summary, in which Tim realizes his flock is a mafia. Ever since the incident, a lot of things had happened. First, Tim tried to investigate whoever this GIY group was. Tried being the key word. Every lead had gone cold. The GIY wasn't in any of the League's encrypted databases, not in the government records, not on the dark web, not even Reddit. Reddit! The same place people posted about ghost cats and crypt raccoons and conspiracy theories involving Bruce Wayne and Bigfoot. Nothing, not even a whisper of existence. He had already gone through every DEO alias he could find, chased 5 different false leads to unrelated Cadmus side projects, and sent 2 messages to Oracle that even he would describe as increasingly unhinged. There was no digital paper trail, no official records, just one name, one acronym, and a ghost who shook every time he saw a green light. He even called Oracle to see if she'd heard anything. "Blank slate," she told him, frowning over a secure line. Not even a whisper on our side, which usually means it's either deep black ops or they are deliberately scrubbing. Be careful, Red. He was. Which is why, while Ghost was napping hard enough to look dead, Dead had tucked under wing. Little chirps echoing like eldritch snores, looking like an adorable birdie against his clothes. Tim sat hunched at his desk, glaring at his laptop screen like it had personally offended him. He was going insane. Someone had tried to take what was his birds, his ghost, and now that it was time for retaliation, there wasn't even a whisper of their existence to strike back at. No names, no address, no digital footprint, just a green, glowing net, a van, and the phantom ache of Ghost's injuries. They had heard what was his, and he couldn't even find them to return the favor. So with a sigh bordering on rage, Tim took the opportunity to call the only other ghost he knew. The connection crackled, hissed, and finally picked up on the other end, over Chrissy's phone, oddly enough. "No, Red Robin," Secret said, voice a little fizzily. "I don't know much. I've heard rumors, but nothing concrete." Tim leaned back, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're a ghost, Secret. Can you turn into a bird?" There was a long, waited pause. "You know I can't," she deadpanned. "That doesn't sound like a normal ghost ability. Maybe this guy's a meta-ghost? Or maybe he's literally just a ghost bird." Tim grimaced. "I don't know which answer I heard more," Secret hummed thoughtfully. "What I can tell you is this. He's powerful. He can maintain a physical form constantly, which means his energy levels are ridiculously high. Probably not full power, if he still needs to sleep like that, but still." Tim sat up straighter. "Is that uncommon? For someone like me?" "Yeah. The stronger the ghosts, the more dangerous they are. The more they can imitate life. The stronger they are. For example, I don't even risk contact with stronger ghosts. They could rip me apart if they wanted to. Ghosts don't follow human power scales. We measure by intent and presence. And yours?" She hesitated. "He's more than just a shade, or an echo. He's got weight, something deep. If he is powerful enough for you to hug him and touch him, he's either ancient or a calamity. But knowing you, I would bet you don't even care about that." Tim glanced towards the bed where Ghost was still snoring, into a pile of his old clothes, like a haunted croissant. "He's not a calamity," Tim said, pushing his chair to be closer to him. "He is my bird. Then we protect your bird." "I've been asking around," Secret continued. "There's this woman I've been in contact with. kinda paranormal expert. Her parents were hunters before the government started covering things up. She's tight-lipped, but she knows more than she's saying, and if I can get anything out of her, I will pass it on. Tim exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. Thanks. I'm flying blind here, and it's not great. You're poking something old, Red Robin, Secret warned, and big. Be careful. As soon as I know the name of the woman, I will send it to you. The call disconnected. Tim sat there in the silence, staring at his laptop's frozen screen. Outside, the sun filtered dimly through the windows, and on the bed, Ghost twitched once in his sleep, one wing fluttering in response to some dream only he could see. Tim closed the laptop, leaned forward, and whispered, "What are you?" And then there was the other problem. Namely, Ghost had become permanently attached to Tim's person. Like clingy barnacle meets feral cat attached. The moment Tim stood up, the raven was on him. Shoulder perch? Claimed. Wrist? Claimed. Laptop keyboard? Claimed. The very concept of personal space? Dead. Murdered. Buried under black feathers and stubborn claws. Tim had once tried to leave for patrol without him. Ghost screamed. Not just any scream, an eldritch shriek, of such pitch and intensity that all of Tim's alarms went off. 3 of his neighbors called security, and a toddler 2 floors down bursted into tears. It was like trying to sneak out on a clingy, vengeful poltergeist disguised as an emotional support bird. "You're not coming," Tim had said that night, firmly, while strapping on his gear. Ghost puffed up to maximum volume and let out a cry that shattered the hallway light bulb. Tim sighed, turned around, and held out his arm. The raven landed with smug triumph and didn't scream the rest of the night. He did, however, try to bite Nightwing when he got too close. "Is that thing jealous?" Dick had asked, blinking at the scratched glove. "Don't anthropomorphize him," Tim said. Ghost preened proudly on his shoulder. "I think he's anthropomorphizing himself," Dick muttered. Tim couldn't exactly argue. At home, things weren't much different. Ghost had officially declared within petting distance as his default setting, whether hovering beside the keyboard, nuzzling into Tim's temple, doing casework, or draping himself across Tim's shoulders like an emotional support scarf. The raven made it very clear that his presence was not optional, and as if that wasn't enough, the rest of his feathered entourage had apparently decided now was the time to go full emotional support unit. Madonna, for example, had claimed Tim's hoodie as her divine right. Any prologued work session meant she'd slid into the hood like a sleepy serpent, curled up inside the soft fabric, as though it were a hammock crafted by the gods themselves, and promptly fall asleep, with her head tucked under her wing. Sometimes she snored. Tim had never admitted that he found it smoothing. Lady, ever the quiet companion, liked to nestle beside Ghost wherever he happened to be perched, be it desk, shelf, or the top of the fridge, like a gargoyle with opinions, and Ghost, despite his usual dramatic eldritch bird of doom flair, would always lift a wing for her, letting her tuck in beside him like the world's weirdest, most wholesome bromance drama. Cece and Dee Dee had gone full interior design. They had taken it upon themselves to help Ghost build a nest in the apartment. A nest made of carefully curated socks, strategically acquired lingerie, and what Tim was 90% sure used to be his favorite blanket. Over time, it became less a quirky corner pile and more a fully realized avian annexed. The nest's final form? Tim's bed, which meant that as of last week, Ghost had moved into Tim's bed and Tim was now sleeping on the couch, because, as he told himself every night, you don't disturb a nesting bird. That's just disrespectful. Even if that bird had stolen 80% of your wardrobe, and used your last clean comforter to build a feather throne. At first Tim had tried to negotiate. He bought a small blanket, a decoy hoodie, even a new throw blanket. Ghost stared at him, then walked over, picked up the throw pillow, and yeeted it off to the side of the bed. Craw! Tim sighed and slept on the couch that night. But a few days later, just before midnight, he was wrapping up reports and trying not to think about how much his bag hated him. Ghost flapped down from the hallway and landed in front of him, on the coffee table. The raven tilted his head, eyes bright, feathers fluffed, then slowly, meaningfully, bed. Tim blinked. Is that an invitation? Ghost crowed again, then turned, waddled down the hall like a little goth landlord, and stopped just before the bedroom. Glancing back once more, Tim stood, rubbing a hand over his face. All right, fine, but if you bite me in my sleep, the deal is off. Ghost just fluffed and stalked into the bedroom like a victorious warlord. That night, Tim laid carefully on his own bed, wedged between a ghost bird, a nest made of his own clothes, and 2 pigeons, who had decided his stomach was the new designed heating pad. Lady was curled near the headboard. Cece chirped in her sleep. Ghost nestled close, beak tucked under Tim's chin. And somehow, despite the feathers, the fluff, and the absurdity of the situation, Tim slept better than he had in weeks. But while the does had become his new fluffy cuddling unit, the crows had gone feral. Tim wasn't sure what switch had flipped in the little corvid brains. But ever since Ghost had been netted, the crows had taken on the collective vibe of a 1920s gangster family with a vendetta. Little, once his reliable one, item evidence retriever, had upgraded his workflow. Now Tim didn't just get a single key piece of evidence, he got the original, a backup of the backup, and somehow a stolen paperclip, just in case it turns out to be important. Tim had started having to organize the bird delivery clues by crime scene, and possibly install a few filing cabinets labeled crow stuff, possibly illegal. Brad, formerly a snarky loudmouth, still accurate, had begun narrating his attacks. Hey, idiot! He'd caw gleefully before dropping a rock with surgical precision onto some poor goon's head. No amount of scolding had stopped him. If anything, the hacking got worse. And Ghost, traitorous feathered bastard, laughed every time that horrible Weasley bird laughed. That should not have been endearing, but absolutely was. And because apparently ravens like to follow bad habits, Ghost had joined Brad onto the narration. Battles had never felt wonkier. Bastard, his self-assigned bodyguard, had turned into a kamikaze with wings. The bird had 0 self-preservation and 100% bloodlust. Didn't matter who Tim was fighting. Somewhere in the chaos, Bastard would appear and deliver a decisive nip to the face. One time Tim slipped. His flock opened for just a second, and before he could register the danger, Bastard launched himself like an angry black bean and blinded the guy mid-strike with a screech of pure fury. Tim had absolutely not cried. He did, however, buy Bastard a very fancy snack the next day with a candle and a placemat because manners. Sherlock was the only one who hadn't changed. Not overtly, anyway. He still acted like Tim's long-suffering business partner, aloof, dry, and overqualified. always perched on the highest shelf, with the distinct air of, "I'm too important for this nonsense." But now, even unassigned, Sherlock would preemptively investigate Tim's open cases. Entire dossiers started appearing on Tim's desk. Typed case summaries, suspected maps, evidence chains. At one point, a red string web materialized across the bulletin board, and when Tim asked Ghost, who helped him make it, the bird turned his head away and preened like a smug Manor detective who worked alone and didn't need praise. Honestly, Tim had no idea what was going on anymore. His apartment had become an avian mafia headquarters. He had a feral flock acting out John Wick, Bird Edition, and he was living with a clingy murder bird who liked to scream like a banshee and cuddle like a baby blanket in equal measures. But sometimes, when Ghost looked at him with those bright, intelligent eyes and curled into the nook of his hoodie after a long patrol with a soft, tired craw, Tim would feel something heavy and warm settle behind his ribs. Not just affection, not just duty, something worse, something deeper. He was maybe a little in love with the whole murder of them, and that terrified him more than any rogue gallery ever could. That's why on this particular Sunday afternoon, as Tim stood by his motorcycle, gearing up for the weekly Wayne Manor ritual of forced family bonding and pastime aggressive side-eye, he really shouldn't have been surprised. And yet, he was. There they were, all of them. Every single one of his birds, perched dramatically along the power lines, clustered on the railing, lined up like a feathered mafia hit squad along the sidewalk, organized by height and judgment levels. Ghost, of course, was front and center, balanced atop the neighbor's mailbox, like a goth weather vane. Wings flailed dramatically, eyes gleaming with anticipation and unholy purpose. Tim paused, mid-glove, narrowed his eyes, and pointed at them like a teacher confronting the worst-behaved gifted class in Gotham. "I'm going to the Manor," he said slowly, as if this was new information, and not literally every Sunday since forever. "None of you have ever wanted to come to the Manor. It's loud. There are people. There's Damien." Ghost let out a low, smug craw that sounded way too much like a laugh. Then came a sharp "ha!" from the power line, definitely Brett, and then the whole flock joined in, crows crackling, doves cooing in amused agreement, and Madonna let out a high-pitched whistle she only did when she was mocking someone. Tim sighed and pressed a hand to his temple. "You're mocking me." A dove flopped onto his shoulder with all the subtlety of a falling beanbag and cooed sweetly. He glanced sideways. "Don't try to manipulate me with softness, Madonna. I see through your lies." She blinked at him, tilted her head, and cooed again, this time with the precise pitch of weaponizing innocence. Ghost fluttered down to perch on the handlebar of Tim's bike, fluffing up like a smug goth cat, and locking eyes with Tim in an eldritch display of ride-or-die loyalty. Tim stared back, unmoving. "You are really all coming, aren't you?" The birds answered with a unified wall of noise. Craws, coos, chirps, that one clicky noise Little made when scheming, all of it laid in what could only be translated as a resounding "duh." Ghost was much more direct. "We go," he said, tilting his head. "Where you go?" Tim closed his eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose, accepted his fate. "Fine," he muttered. "But if Damien tries to feed any of you raw steak again, I'm letting you bite him this time." The doves cooed like a polite agreement. The crows crackled like they'd just received a murder contract. And Ghost? Ghost frailed his wings and did that awful, horrible, weirdly romantic thing where he pressed his forehead against Tim's for exactly 2 seconds before jumping onto the front of the bike like he belonged there. "We go!" Phantom said again before taking flight in that unsettling silent way of his that felt less like physics and more like defying gravity. Tim groaned. "Bruce is going to have an aneurysm." He drew one leg over the bike, set his helmet on, and revered the engine with a low growl of defiance as the tires squealed and the motorcycle launched down the road. He got movement in the corner of his eye, black wings, silver gray feathers, soft white bellies, and eyes that gleamed just a little too intelligently. His little parade had taken flight. Ghost flew lowest, right at his side, matching the bike's speed with fluent, predatory grace. His massive wings slicing through the air with ease, and of course, just the right amount of melodrama. Silent and haunted like his namesake. Above them, Brad dive-bombed a street sign just because he could, crying menacingly. Sherlock soared like a precision scout, quiet and focused, already scanning ahead for threats or, knowing him, suspiciously shaped chimney smoke. The doors, a pristine reformation, elegant and soft, gliding overhead like living silk banners of aerial menace, which was deeply unfair considering all 4 of them had once tried to eat his ramen straight out of the pot. A murder of crows, a cuddle of those, and one possibly eldritch raven with an attitude problem, a superiority complex, and a deep-seated desire to be in Tim's hoodie at all times. And all of them his. Tim grinned under the helmet as he took the curve towards the manor. Alfred was going to lose his mind. He felt the whisper, soft trump of talons on his shoulder. The barely there shift in weight, so familiar now, it barely registered. Ghost settled into place, like a velvet shadow, warm and steady, his claws circling with practiced ease into the reinforced seam of Tim's jacket. Tim didn't flinch, didn't even glance, just reached up and gave the bird a gentle tap on the beak through his gloves. Ghost muscled into his neck, like it was right, and then Wayne Manor opened its gates for him. The motorcycle came to a smooth stop in the circular drive, gravel crunching under the tires. The massive front doors creaked open with the usual dramatic flair, and there stood Alfred, ever composed, ever immaculate, holding a tray with surgical precision, dressed to put the entire GCPD to shame, and greeting him with a polite nod and a crisp, "Welcome home, Master Tim." He paused. His eyes flickered to the large raven perched on Tim's shoulder, like the world's most judgmental fashion accessory from a Shakespearean cosplay convention. There was a brief moment of silence, a single twitch of one brow, which for Alfred may as well have been a full-body double-take and a scandalized gasp. "Ah," he said smoothly, recovering in record time. "And welcome to you guests as well." Tim cleared his throat. "So, is there a way we could maybe open the dining room windows today?" Alfred gave him the look. "For what purpose, Master Tim?" Tim gestured wiggly behind them. And sure enough, there they were, circling overhead, perched on the highest gables, lining the rooftop like decorative gargoyle display gone rogue. The entire flock. "If they can't at least see me," Tim said solemnly, "they're probably going to start a mid-air protest. There will be screaming, possibly a window tapping, possibly the theft of unattended silverware. Alfred was quiet for a moment. He exhaled, soft and long, suffering, but Tim caught the faintest twitch of a smile at the edge of his mouth. Very well, Master Tim. I shall see to it. Should I also inform your brothers to double-check their pockets upon leaving? Tim blinked. Yes, that would be wise. Ghost let out a content craw, like he just won something. And just like that, Tim stepped into Wayne Manor with a little raven of the storm on his shoulder, because his life had clearly taken a very specific and inescapable turn. The dining room greeted him with the usual warmth, the click of cutlery, the low murmur of conversation, and the comforting aroma of Alfred's Sunday roast, rosemary, carrots, rhyme, and the faint, desperate hope of familial civility. Dick was already seated, leaning back in his chair with a relaxed grin that immediately faltered into confusion as his eyes landed on Tim's shoulder. Duke, halfway through whatever video he'd been watching, blinked and slowly set his phone aside. Damien sat at the far end, absorbed in his own screen, until he wasn't. One by one their gaze lifted and looked onto Ghost. Dick squinted. Ah, Tim? Is that the new bird? Duke leaned forward, eyebrows high. Dude, that's not a bird. That's a winged crypt with a superiority complex. Corvus Croix, Damien breathed, eyes gleaming with rapid attention. That's a common raven, but he's enormous, at least 30 inches from beak to tail. Incredible plumage. Is that an opalescent tint along the ramages? His wings gloss suggest above-average dietary protein and high preening frequency. He stood abruptly, practically vibrating with excitement. He's beautiful. Ghost turned slowly, blinking with deliberate composure like a cat surveying its least favorite houseplant. Then, tilting his head, he let out a low, calculated craw somewhere between smug greeting and casual threat. Tim reached up to scratch on the Ghost's chin. He is Ghost. He's, kind of attached. Ghost responded with a gravely purr, a sound like a haunted flux machine drowning in molasses, before gently, pointedly biting Tim's ear. Tim didn't even flinch. That's normal. Dick frowned. Tim, that bird just kissed you. It's called preening, Tim said flatly, maintaining what little dignity he had left, while Ghost chewed affectionately on his collar like a moody goth boyfriend. And we don't judge love here, remember? There was a beat of silence that was broken by Ghost speaking. Dumbus. Holy, Tim, your bird just insulted me! You deserve it. Tim bit the inside of his cheek, trying not to laugh, as Ghost leveled Dick with a look. Then Damien took a deliberate step closer, expression speculative. Is he trained? Can he carry weighted messages? Tracked by scent? Would he tolerate a harness? Ghost glared, full body puff, wings slightly out, beak open just enough to suggest he was considering a dramatic monologue in Morse code. Tim sighed. He's not a sidekick, Dames. Every bird has potential, Damien said solemnly. Ghost promptly turned around, lifted a wing, and smacked Damien across the forehead with it. Dick joked on his water. Duke wheezed. Damien stood frozen for a second, face blank. Then, slowly, a grin curled across his face. I like him. Of course you do, Tim muttered, rubbing his ear. He's dramatic, violent, and emotionally unavailable. Ghost preened his shoulder proudly, letting out a cooing craw that somehow managed to sound smug and flirtatious at the same time. Damien took a cautious step forward, eyes wide with pure, reverent fascination. "May I touch him?" he asked, like he was requesting an audience with a divine relic. Ghost turned his head slowly, fixing Damien with a stare that carried the full weight of eldritch judgment and the soul of a particularly bitchy librarian. His eyes gleamed with supernatural intelligence and a flicker of annoyance. Then in a voice like gravel, mixed with storm wind, "Tim." It was the first time Tim had ever heard Ghost say his name aloud. Not in mimicry or mockery, but with the rawness that sent a chill skimming down his spine. It wasn't just recognition, it was claim. Tim blinked, stunned for a heartbeat, before warmth flooded his chest. He reached up, fingers brushing gently through the feathers, at Ghost's crest, and smiled when the giant bird physically leaned into the touch. Ghost melted against him, with the blind affection of a heart-drunk cat, making a low garbled purr that vibrated against Tim's hand. "If you want," Tim said, voice softer than he meant it to be, almost fond. His hand lingered, fingertips tracing slow circles, as Ghost exhaled a noise that could only be described as an eldritch sigh. Ghost blinked at Damien once, slow. Then, with the air of someone doing something entirely for their beloved's benefit, he spread his wings just slightly, precisely measured, regal, deliberate. Permission. Tim, who knew full well what that tiny wing flutter meant, gave a small shrug. He said yes, probably. Ghost nestled back into Tim's chest with the weight of a creature who chose to exist here, in this moment, in his life, because Tim was in it. His beak tucked under Tim's jaw like a seal, claws flexing lightly against his chest in pure contentment, as Damien inched closer, like he was approaching royalty, with a pocket full of black sunflower seeds. Tim's attention drifted towards the open windows across the dining room. The evening breeze rustled the trees. Then came the murder. Crows and doves dropped into view in synchronized formation, perching along the window frames, curtain rods, and exposed beams, like a feathered crime syndicate. Sherlock claimed the cylinder with immediate gravitas. Bastard landed beside the punch bowl like a gremlin guarding forbidden fruit. Madonna was already cooing through the window pane, like she paid rent here. Tim turned back to his increasingly horrified family with the calm of a man who had long since accepted the absurdity of his life. "I hope you don't mind," he said, too casually. "They are not host-trained, but they are drama-trained." Dick turned towards the windows and let out a low, resonant whistle. "Jesus, Tim, you're not just Red Robin anymore. You're the Bird King." Ghost crowed triumphantly, talons tightening on Tim's shoulder, like he was claiming his rightful throne. Tim smiled, just a little. "Long live the murder." Then, as if he was struck by divine intervention, Dick leaned forward in his chair, eyes wide, hands twitching with excitement, like a kid at a petting zoo on espresso. "Okay, real question. Can I pet the doves? Is there, like, a sign-up sheet? Do I need to offer tribute, snacks, emotional vulnerability?" Tim shot him a dry look. "They will come to you if they feel like it. If you startle them, though, they will poop on you with vengeance and aim." As if summoned by fate itself, Madonna fluttered in through the window and landed gracefully on the back of the chair nearest Dick. She gave him a single assessing blink, then fluffed dramatically and turned around, like a cat presenting her bag for tributes. Dick lit up like a Christmas tree. His fingers instantly went to the top of her head, scratching with the delicacy that the feathers of Madonna deserved. "Oh my God, she's so soft. Why is she softer than me?" Tim deadpanned. "Because you moisturize like a raccoon and sleep on plywood." Dick clutched his chest. "Tim, I'm going to cry, like, really. Best day of my entire life." Ghost made a sound suspiciously like laughter. Meanwhile, Duke was slowly leaning away from his chair with a wary eye trained on the large crow now perched behind him. Little tilted his head side to side, fixing Duke with a gleaming, too smart stare, calculating. Then, with extravagated care, he plucked something from under his wing. "A cracked walnut." Tim blinked. "Oh no," he muttered. Little crowed once, short and sharp. "You are my friend now," and gently dropped the walnut in Duke's lap. Duke stared down at the gift, then at Tim, then at the bird. "Did I just get claimed?" "Probably," Tim sighed. "He's very specific with his allegiances." Little fluffed up like a victorious beanbag and preened his wings, the picture of smug benevolence. Before Tim could intervene, he felt the familiar tug on his jacket. Damien had drifted closer, petting Ghost's head with a surprisingly gentle hand. "Your bird is unusually intelligent," Damien said, practically reverent. Then, as if assessing a purebred show falcon, he reached down and carefully extended one of Ghost's wings. Tim opened his mouth. Wait. Too late. Ghost's head whipped around with a crisp clack of his beak, sharp and fast, like a switchblade snapping open. Damien blinked, startled, and released the wing instantly, taking a respectful half-step back. Ghost stared him down, eyes narrowed, then turned deliberately and nested back into Tim's chest. One wing dropped possessively across his sternum. His message was loud and clear. "Don't like it. Watch yourself, demon child." "Drake!" Damien huffed, mildly scandalized. "Your bird has burn marks. What sort of abuse are you subjecting this majestic being to?" "First of all," Tim said dryly, stroking a smoothing hand down Ghost's back, "I rescued him from those stupid goons. The burns are not from me. Second, he's perfectly capable of pecking anyone who tries anything, so maybe don't make him prove it." Ghost gave a pleased puff, then rubbed his beak into Tim's hair in an almost shy gesture, a soft, bashful coo rambling from his throat. Tim tilted his head down slightly and whispered, "See, you don't have to get offended on my behalf." Ghost responded with a quiet craw, then, with all the regal drama of a spoiled monarch, extended his wing towards Damien once more, this time with an air of, "I suppose I will allow you to try again, only because my human says so." Damien hesitated. "This bird has more emotional nuance than most people I know," he said finally, stepping forward like a knight approaching a temperamental fey king. "Tell me about it," Tim muttered, smiling faintly as Ghost leaned into his neck, still watching Damien with a look that said, "One wrong move, and I'm taking a finger." From across the table, Dick whispered, "Does this make Tim a Disney princess or a villain sidekick trainer?" Duke, now cradling a second walnut from Little, and looking like he didn't want to offend his new crow overlord, replied without looking up, "Both." The doors creaked open with the usual theatrical flair. Tim swore Bruce intentionally left them that way for dramatic timing. and in walked Jason. He took one look at the feathered circus unfolding in the dining room and came to a full dead stop. "Oh no," he said flatly, dead plain in his voice. From the windowsill, Bastard let out a low, guttural cry, a sound far too close to a maniacal laugh for anyone's comfort. The little gremlin flared his wings like a bat, preparing to launch and pin Jason with a death glare that screamed, "I remember the time you tried to pet me without tribute, punk." Jason pointed accusingly. That one's plotting something. I can feel it." Tim rolled his eyes before he shooed Damien away. He walked to the table and sat on his seat. Ghost instinctively moved to perch regularly on his lap, nuzzling into his chest like the world's most smug therapy cat, and didn't even look up. "He's always plotting something," Tim said blandly. "You just happen to be his favorite target." Before Jason could argue, the rest of the Chaos Brigade began filtering in. Steph skipped through the doorway mid-joke with Cass, only to pause as Lady swooped gracefully from the rafters to perch on the back of her chair. "Aww," Steph cooed immediately, reaching back without hesitation to stroke her feathers. "I love you already. You have perfect taste." Lady fluffed with smug pride and gave a content coo, clearly in full agreement. Cass, ever silent and precise, made a beeline for the windows. Dee perched there, like an anxious cloud of sentient cotton, chirped quietly the moment she approached. She didn't flinch when Cass extended a hand, just leaned forward with twitchy shyness and gently bumped her beak against Cass's fingers. Cece, not to be upstaged, launched into a dramatic fluff-flop combination that was part ballet, part toddler tantrum. She landed in the warm heap at Cass's feet, chirping insistently like "You didn't say hi to me yet." Cass crouched beside her with a soft smile, reaching out to gently stroke Cece's back and petted Dee in tandem. It was like watching a monk in perfect harmony with two nervous clouds. Dick leaned closer to Tim, whispering with mock awe, "She has become the bird whisperer." Tim deadpanned. "Honestly, they're just into anyone with stabby energy." Jason crossed his arms, eyeing the birds with deep suspicion. "One of them stole my shoelaces last week." "Statistically, probably Brett," Tim said without hesitation. As if on cue, Brett dive-bombed the dining room cylinder just to make it swing ominously above Jason's head. Jason stared up. "I'm going to throw hands with that bird." Bastard crowed again, louder this time, and Ghost ruffled slightly from Tim's lap, like the king acknowledging the squabble of peasants. Tim just sipped his tea. Dick, meanwhile, looked like he had found nirvana. He sat with a blissful outgrin on his face, gently petting Madonna as she snoozed in full loaf mode across his lap. She looked like royalty incarnate, eyes closed, tail feathers twitching contentedly, completely at peace. Sherlock sat perched just behind him on the chair, rigid and watching the scene like a very serious supervisor, ensuring proper pigeon protocol. "Tim," Dick whispered reverently, "I didn't know happiness could feel like this." Tim raised an eyebrow. "You have a dog." "Yeah, but this one is a compact happiness loaf, with feathers and no taxes." At the far end of the room, Brad had claimed Barbara's share with the confidence of a seasoned politician as soon as she rolled in. He had made his goal to make her laugh by mimicking Damien's voice with alarming accuracy, occasionally spitting out, "Drake is a menace, uncultured swine, and most concerningly, give the bird your tax records." Barbara was laughing so hard she had tears streaming down her face. "I love your bird, Mafia. This is the best part of Sundays now. Please don't call them that," Tim muttered. Brad immediately screamed, "Robin supremacy!" again in Damien's voice, and Barbara nearly choked on her water. And then, as if summoned by the sheer density of nonsense in the air, Bruce entered the room. The chaos dueled to a soft murmur. Humans' heads turned. Birds' heads decidedly did not. Ghosts, in fact, chose that exact moment to nuzzle against Tim's chin. In a show, deliberate drag of beak against skin, he fluffed up proudly, tail feathers flickering, as he tugged on the Tim's jar, emitting a soft, hunted gurgle that translated clearly to "mine" in at least 6 dialects and 1 form of Eldritch Latin. Tim, unfazed, gave him a scratch under the beak and looked up. "Hey, Bruce." Bruce took in the scene. Tim, with a clingy raven curl in his lap like a possessive crypt cat. Dick stroking a pigeon like it was sacred. Damien hovering reverently near a perch where Bastard had started to preen his hair. Duke holding 2 walnuts like gifts from the gods, and a crow perched in architectural defiance of interior design. "I see the flock has grown," Bruce said slowly. "They're clingy," Tim replied, as Ghost flopped in his lap like a weighted blanket with judgmental eyes. Bruce didn't respond. Then, from the corner, Bastard let out another one of his guttural he craws. Jason flinched. "We're all gonna die," he muttered. "They're planning a coup." Steph reached over to scratch Lady's head. "If it's a coup, at least it will be a cute one." "You will be the first one they eat," Jason said darkly. "Worth it," Steph replied without hesitation. And Ghost, regal, ridiculous, and radiating smug eldritch menace, nuzzled on a Tim's jaw again, tail feathers flicking, his eyes gleaming with deep satisfaction, like this was proceeding according to his plan. And that's the chapter. Yes, that's the chapter. I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you like my videos in general, feel free to subscribe. I do Podfic commissions, so if you want to commission a Podfic, infos to that are in my channel description. Zach, you want to say something?
Holy shit, you made like 200 mistakes probably.
And that's the word from, I guess, my helper now.
Okay, you can put me in there, I don't care.
Because this video has took so long to cut and something like that, you gotta get highlights. So for the next few minutes, there's just me struggling with the recording and random highlights from the recording. Zach is also with there, and I hope just enjoy it. Welcome home, Master Tim. Please, nuns. No, I don't know the word again. Why are there so many difficult words in this? This is a crime.
Pliant.
Tim's attention drifted towards the open windows across the dining hall. Why am I laughing again? Pain? Plain. Why is it hard? This is an easy word. That should be an easy word. Pain. I'm gonna say it's pain. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna check it, even though it's 4 letters.
Pain.
It is pain. It is pain. They will poop on you with the... What the fuck? Sorry. I don't know why, but this is so fucking funny. I addicted to using the translator, apparently.
Vengeance.
Vengeance. It's vengeance.
Then use me instead.
You're in the recording now.
I don't care. I'll be honest, holy shit, wow, you had to look up if pain was pronounced pain? Oh god, you were, and you pronounced, and earlier you pronounced superiority as superiority or something.
Don't know what's up with me today. I think I got too high on stories, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's very specific with his agencies. No, alliances. Is it alliances or agencies? I think it's agencies.
Allegiances.
Allegiances, god damn it! None of it. He is very specific. He's very specific with his. What? What did you say?
Allegiances.
What?
Allegiances.
Allegiances, okay. Maniacal, that's it! Maniacal! A sound
Maniacal.
Swooshed. No. Snoozed. Has he snoozed? It's probably snoozed. Zach?
Snoozed.
It is? Okay. I don't know what's up with me today. I've seen this word so many times. 3 times, actually. Reverently. Thanks. Dick whispered reverent. With an alarming accuracy. Zach.
What word?
Accurately.
Wait, no. Accuracy, yeah, sorry.
Accuracy, okay. Occasionally spitting out. Drake is a menace.
Occasionally.
Oh, fuck. Occasionally spitting out.
You said occasionally.
Robin Damien hovering. That's his word again. Reverently. Tail feathers flickering. Tail flicker. Have a nice rest of your time. See you next time.